Hey everyone, it's Alex, and I'm back with my long delayed video where I go over the winners for the 88th Academy Awards, my reactions to them, and my review of the ceremony itself. So, let's not waste any further time and get right on it. And here are the actual winners. Best Art Direction, Mad Max Fury Road, production design by Colin Gibson, set decoration by Lisa Thompson. This was an interesting win. It was certainly the frontrunner to win, but it's interesting due to the fact that a lot of post-apocalyptic movies don't usually win this award. This award usually goes to more lavish period films. Personally, I was rooting for The Martian to win because the way in which they recreated Mars in the Wadi Rum Desert of Jordan looked really amazing to me, but Mad Max Fury Road is a great second choice, in my opinion. Best Cinematography, Emmanuel Lubezki, The Revenant. Absolutely. The Revenant was an amazingly beautiful movie. The shots in that movie were just so breathtaking. And part of the reason for that is because The Revenant was shot in all natural light. No artificial lighting was used in any of the cameras during the production of that film. Plus, Emmanuel Lubezki is one of the most amazing cinematographers of all time. He was the cinematographer on one of my favorite films of all time, The Tree of Life, and I think his cinematography for the film Knight of Cups, which came out earlier this year, is the most beautiful cinematography of the year. Although The Light Between Oceans, which has Adam Arkapaw as the cinematographer, could end up beating it, but we'll see. Best Costume Design, Jenny Bevan, Mad Max Fury Road. Again, this is the type of winner you don't usually see in this category, and while the costumes in Mad Max Fury Road were good, I honestly thought Sandy Powell should have won for Cinderella. Sandy was actually nominated twice, for Cinderella and for Carol. But her costumes in Cinderella I thought were just beautiful, not only for Cinderella's beautiful ball gown, but also just all the clothes in that movie, from the ball gowns and to the rags that Cinderella wears, so just everything. Best Film Editing, Margaret Sixel, Mad Max Fury Road. Absolutely. The editing in Mad Max Fury Road was some of the best editing I have ever seen in an action movie. Best Makeup and Hairstyling, Leslie Vanderwalt, Elka Wardega, and Damian Martin, Mad Max Fury Road. I can certainly understand why this may have won, but I personally thought The Revenant should have won, because you not only had to make Leonardo DiCaprio look like he had been mauled by a bear, but you also had to make him look like he had been constantly exposed to the cold and the elements while wandering around in the wilderness seeking revenge. Best Original Score, Ennio Morricone, The Hateful Eight. Definitely was a very good score, but I honestly thought John Williams should have won for Star Wars Episode VII, The Force Awakens. All of the scores nominated here were great, but John Williams just has that quality to him that you usually don't find with a lot of other composers, and he could have easily just ripped off all of his other Star Wars scores and used elements from those in The Force Awakens, but no, he managed to create a whole new original score, and it just matched every scene perfectly, especially at the very end of the film. I'm not going to say what that ending is, but I assume most of you who are watching this will know what I'm talking about, because Star Wars The Force Awakens is the highest grossing movie of all time in the United States, if you just factor in the US grosses and not the international grosses too. Best Original Song, Writings on the Wall from Spectre, music and lyrics by Jimmy Napes and Sam Smith. This was definitely one of the most controversial wins at the Oscars this year, and I'm actually one of the few who is glad that this song won. When I first listened to all these songs, I was actually tied between Writings on the Wall from Spectre and Till It Happens to You from The Hunting Ground, which is written and sung by Lady Gaga. And Lady Gaga performed at that song at the Oscars as well, but more on that later. And I honestly was so tied that I had to flip a coin to decide which one I thought should win more. And I know Writings on the Wall has been very controversial from the moment it was released. Some people really liked it, others thought it was the worst James Bond theme song ever. I thought some elements of Writings on the Wall could have been improved. I think the orchestration could have been toned down a little bit. I think at some points the orchestration almost drowned out Sam Smith's voice in the song, but otherwise it's a very good song. It's certainly not as good as, say, Skyfall by Adele, but it's certainly better than Earned It from 50 Shades of Grey and Manta Ray from Racing Extinction. Earned It was an okay song, but why did it have to be on the 50 Shades of Grey soundtrack? Manta Ray was okay. Simple Song Number 3 from Youth, that was a very beautiful song. I know, of course, a lot of people really wish See You Again from Furious 7 was on here. It wasn't even nominated, but I already said many times that I feel that that's an overrated song, and I'm not going to go into that any further. If you want me to talk about why I think it's overrated, then watch my original video reaction to the actual nominations that I posted before the ceremony happened. Best Sound Editing, Mark Mangini and David White, Mad Max Fury Road. No question there, very deserving. Best Sound Mixing, Chris Jenkins, Greg Rudloff, and Ben Osmo, Mad Max Fury Road. Again, very deserving. Best Visual Effects. This was probably the most jaw-dropping category of the night in terms of who won. Andrew Whitehurst, Paul Norris, Mark Ardington, and Sarah Bennett, Ex Machina. When Andy Serkis opened the envelope and read Ex Machina as the winner, my jaw just dropped. I'm like, what? Not in a bad way, but I totally did not see Ex Machina pulling off a win in a category like this, because most analysts who were looking at the nominees pretty much agreed that it was going to be a tight battle between Mad Max Fury Road and Star Wars Episode 7 The Force Awakens. If I were an Academy voter, I personally would have voted for Star Wars, not because I'm a Star Wars fanboy, although I am a Star Wars fan, but I genuinely believed it did have the best visual effects of the year, a really brilliant blend of both practical and computer effects. But Ex Machina, of course, they had to do these very subtle but very still noticeable computer effects to create the robotic look of Alicia Vikander's character. In a very convincing way, too, I might add. So while I personally would have liked to see Star Wars win this award, I congratulate the Ex Machina technicians on at least pulling off an upset victory like this. It should be noted that one of the Ex Machina team members, Sarah Bennett, is only the second woman to ever win an Oscar for visual effects. Some of you might be thinking, no, that can't possibly be true, but it is. There are certain fields in Hollywood that are sadly very male-dominated, even to this day, and visual effects is one of them. However, there have been a lot more women invited to join the visual effects branch of the Academy in recent years, so hopefully things will improve there. Actually, the last woman to win a Best Visual Effects Oscar, her name was Suzanne M. Benson for the movie Aliens. So it's been 30 years since a woman won an Oscar for Best Visual Effects. So hopefully we won't have to wait that long for another woman to win the honor here. Best Animated Short Film, Bear Story, Gabriel Osorio and Pato Escala. This was definitely another surprise win because I think most people, including myself, assumed that Sanjay's Super Team was a lock to win in this category. It was my personal choice to win, but Bear Story was my second place option. It's still a very good short. Best Live Action Short Film, Stutterer, Benjamin Cleary and Serena Armitage. This was my personal third choice in terms of which short films I liked best in that category. I think most people predicted Ave Maria would win. That short film was about a Jewish family whose car breaks down outside a convent, and they must ask the nuns for help, even though the nuns have taken a vow of silence. Um, that was actually a very funny short. Everything Will Be Okay was my personal choice to win. That was about a father who tries to kidnap his daughter and take her to Indonesia because he feels he doesn't spend enough time with her. And there's like a very tense showdown at the end between him and the police. Uh, and Stutterer, the actual winner, that was about a man with such a severe stutter that the only way he can properly communicate with people is through Facebook or through sign language. He can speak English, but he stutters so terribly that he doesn't want to speak out loud. And he meets this woman on Facebook, and when they finally meet in person, she turns out to be deaf. And that is basically a big blessing for him, because since he frequently communicates in sign language, he'll have no problem communicating with her as a result. Best Documentary Short Subject: A Girl in the River, The Price of Forgiveness, Charmine Obaid-Chinoy. I actually recognize the filmmaker who won this category because she won the Best Documentary Short Subject a few years ago as well for a documentary called Saving Face. She makes a lot of documentaries about women in the Middle East and how they're being treated horribly by their fathers, their husbands, how they're still being treated as second-class citizens in the modern-day world because a lot of Middle Eastern countries are very, very conservative with their social norms. And this documentary was kind of how the consequences of doing that affect this one woman whose own family members attempted to kill her because she wanted to marry a man beneath her social status, and the consequences of her family members doing that and her wanting to achieve justice for all the horrible things she went through. My personal choice was Chow Beyond the Lines. That was a very inspiring short about a teenage boy in Vietnam who was born with severe birth defects because of Agent Orange, and it's about his attempts to become a professional artist. Best Documentary Feature: Amy, Asif Kapadia and James Gay Reese. Absolutely, Amy was a phenomenal documentary. It really showed not only how talented Amy Winehouse was as a singer, but it provided a very heartbreaking look into all the vices that led to her death, such as drug addiction, alcohol addiction, and just being surrounded by a lot of people who were a bad influence on her. Very, very sobering documentary, and a very harsh reminder of how people can be corrupted by fame if they're surrounded by the wrong people. Best Foreign Language Film: Son of Saul from Hungary, directed by Laszlo Nemes. Absolutely, that was the rightful winner. Son of Saul was one of the most powerful Holocaust films I have ever seen. And as someone with a history degree, I've seen a lot of Holocaust films, a lot. But this one was very different. It was one of the few Holocaust films I've seen that took place entirely within a concentration camp from beginning to end. And it was probably one of the most up-close and personal looks at a concentration camp I've ever seen in a film, because it's about a man who is literally responsible for cleaning out the gas chambers after they have been used to kill his fellow Jews. And he's just surrounded by corpses and blood and all sorts of nasty stuff. And the film even goes so far as to use a lot of tracking shots. There are a lot of takes where the camera follows the main character Saul for like 3, 4, 5 minutes with no cuts or edits during that time. It's like you're literally walking around with him in the camp as he's going about his duties that he needs to do in order to survive. Best Animated Feature: Inside Out, Pete Docter and Jonas Rivera. Absolutely, that was the rightful winner. Inside Out was one of the best animated films I have ever seen. It's not only one of Pixar's most beautiful looking films that they've ever made, but I honestly think it's one of Pixar's best films that they've ever made. You know, a lot of people feel Pixar was in a slump for the last few years. I know a lot of people didn't like Cars 2. I did like it, although I feel it's Pixar's weakest film. A lot of people were mixed on Brave. I really like Brave. I feel that's an underrated movie. A lot of people did like Monsters University, but I know some felt it was an unnecessary sequel slash prequel. But everyone, and practically everyone, loved Inside Out. And just as I said in my best films of 2015 video, everything in this movie worked. The animation, the story, the characters, the performances, it all came together perfectly. Best Original Screenplay, Josh Singer and Tom McCarthy's Spotlight. Great choice. So that Spotlight was my second favorite film of 2015. Or best film, I should say, because Spotlight is not a movie you'll want to watch over and over again because the subject matter is extremely depressing, and a lot of the scenes in the movie will make you very uncomfortable as you watch it. But a film like this can't succeed if it doesn't have great writing, and Spotlight, oh boy, its writing was phenomenal. I don't know how they pulled it off with such a disturbing subject matter like Spotlight has, sexual abuse in the Catholic Church, but they did it brilliantly, and bravo to them. Best Adapted Screenplay, Charles Randolph and Adam McKay, The Big Short, based on the book by Michael Lewis. Now, all the films nominated here were very well-written films based on very well-received books. The Big Short, that was the last film I saw in 2015, and I liked it so much that I put it in at number 10 on my best films of 2015 list. But I personally thought Drew Goddard should have won for The Martian. Not only because The Martian was my favorite film of 2015, I put it at number 1, but I honestly feel The Martian is one of the best written science fiction films of all time. I truly believe that because The Martian is just one of those films. It seems like it has a very simple story and concept, but the way in which it's carried out is extremely intelligent. It's a lot more intelligent than you might think it is, but it's done so well that I honestly feel The Martian should be used in screenwriting classes to show not only how to write a great science fiction film, but just a great film in general. Best Supporting Actor. Now, a lot of people did not like the winner in this category, but I am so happy this person won. Mark Rylance for Bridge of Spies. Mark Rylance, he was just so great in Bridge of Spies. He was just so nuanced, so subtle, but very powerful. His performance wasn't flashy or loud, but every time he was on screen, you couldn't keep your eyes away from him. So much so that he managed to outshine his co-star Tom Hanks in the scenes that they had together. He made you invest in his character, even though his character did some pretty shady things. He's a spy for the Soviet Union, but Mark Rylance's performance makes you want to stay with the character so that you know what his ultimate fate is. And Mark Rylance has a lot of other projects coming out in the near future because of his Oscar win, and I couldn't be more happy. Best Supporting Actress, Alicia Vikander, The Danish Girl. I personally would have liked to seen Kate Winslet win for Steve Jobs. She played this very tough-as-nails character who could always stand up to Michael Fassbender as Steve Jobs and put him in his place when he went too far. But I will say, Alicia Vikander did do an excellent job in The Danish Girl, and she brought to light a side of transgender stories we don't usually see too often. In most films about transgender people, we see the effect of them transitioning from one gender to another has on them, And while we may often see how it affects their family members, it doesn't usually go in a lot of depth from what I've seen before. But with Alicia Vikander and the Danish Girl, we see the full effect of what it's like for her to watch her husband transition from a man into a woman. We see her be supportive of her husband, but we also see the pain it brings her because her life will be completely different, and she's struggling to accept her husband as a transgender woman, as well as keep the image that she's known from the beginning of their marriage. Best Actor. This was probably the award that made everyone happy. Leonardo DiCaprio, The Revenant. Now, I know a lot of people were like, just give Leo the Oscar already. He's never won before. But to win an Academy Award, you can't win just because you've never won before. You have to stand out. And even though Leonardo DiCaprio has been nominated for an Oscar many times, in years past there was always at least one actor who stood out more than he did, like Jamie Foxx in Ray or Forrest Whitaker in The Last King of Scotland. But this year DiCaprio was front and center, and he not only gave a great performance as Hugh Glass when he opened his mouth to speak, but throughout most of the film where he doesn't even talk, he still made you care about the character even when he didn't open his mouth. And to be able to do that, you have to give a performance that's above and beyond what you normally see from an actor. And that's exactly what DiCaprio did in The Revenant. So bravo to him. Best Actress, Brie Larson, Room. Absolutely, she was the rightful winner here. Brie Larson was phenomenal in Room. You see her trying to be the best mother that she can in a situation that no mother should ever have to go through with her child. And then you see the sense of guilt and shame she feels for being trapped in that situation for a long time, and you see her struggle to readjust to the real world once she gets out in it. That's not a spoiler, by the way, because they show that in the trailer. But Brie Larson, she made you care about her character every step of the way. You wanted to know how she was going to do. You wanted to see if she would be okay by the end, and she just made you care every single time. Because in a movie like Room, you need to care about the characters in order to be on board with the movie, and that's exactly what she made me do. Best Director, Alejandro González Iñárritu, The Revenant. I can certainly see why he won this Oscar, and this was the second year in a row that Iñárritu won, because he won the last year as well for Birdman. Although my personal choice to win wasn't even nominated, and that was Ridley Scott for The Martian. So because of that, my personal choice to win would have been Tom McCarthy for Spotlight, because while Spotlight obviously on a technical level did not have the same kind of challenges that Making the Revenant would have, the fact that it was able to be such a good film despite the disturbing subject matter that it explores showed just how great Tom McCarthy can be as a director when he's given the right material. Because Tom McCarthy, while he did a great job with Spotlight, he also directed one of my absolute worst films of 2015, The Cobbler. Although I think more blame should go to Adam Sandler there, although he and Tom McCarthy did write the script together, but I'm guessing Sandler did more of the bad parts than McCarthy did. I hope that's the case. And then finally, Best Picture, Spotlight, Michael Sugar, Steve Golan, Nicole Rocklin, and Bly Pagan Faust producers. This was an interesting race because Spotlight was the frontrunner at first in the early stages of the Oscar season. But then it kind of fell, and films like The Revenant and The Big Short were considered the big frontrunners. And actually, until Morgan Freeman announced the winner, I think many people did, including myself, did think that The Revenant would ultimately win, because it had already won a lot of the big categories that a Best Picture winner usually wins: cinematography, acting, directing. And Spotlight is the first film since The Greatest Show on Earth in 1952 to win only 2 Oscars, including Best Picture. It could have just won Best Picture and nothing else, which actually did happen once in 1935 to Mutiny on the Bounty, but it won 2 this time. Personally, I would have picked The Martian to win if I were an Oscar voter, because again, that was my favorite film of 2015, but Spotlight was my number 2, so I can't be too mad there. Well, I'm not mad, actually, I should clarify. And those are the Oscar winners. And, they're pretty good for the most part. They're not all the ones I would have voted for personally if I were a member of the Academy, but they were pretty expected, most of them, and there isn't really much to complain about because there's not really a winner that made me outraged or angry. That happens once in a while. For some people, it happens every year, but it didn't really happen for me this year. Now, as for the Oscars ceremony itself, it was actually pretty good, I thought. A lot of people were wondering how is this ceremony going to go with, the whole controversy of another year with all white acting nominees. Chris Rock had been chosen as the host long before the Oscars So White controversy resurfaced itself. But but when that happened, everyone was wondering, ooh, how's Chris Rock going to tackle this in his opening monologue? But I thought he did a pretty good job. Chris Rock, he isn't exactly known for being politically correct, and I thought his monologue was really good. He didn't cross too dangerous of a line, but he certainly was willing to go there. And most of what he said was funny. I thought Chris Rock was funny for most of the night, actually. I never saw the first Oscar ceremony that he hosted, but I know all about the controversies he caused there, such as by saying, "Who the hell is Jude Law?" And Sean Penn wasn't amused when he came out to present, and he was like, "I would like to answer our host's question of who Jude Law is, one of our finest actors." I know all about that, and I've seen the clips of that, but I never saw the whole show. But for this Oscar ceremony, I thought Chris Rock was pretty good for the most part. His monologue was funny. His Girl Scout cookie segment was funny, although I did feel he only did that just because he was trying to copy what Ellen DeGeneres did with her ordering pizza for the audience thing that she did 2 years ago, which I really, really enjoyed. I didn't think she was being serious at first until a pizza guy actually showed up. That moment was brilliant. But the Girl Scout cookie thing, that was funny. But then the Asian kids dressed as accountants, that's the not funny part right there, because that segment led to a wave of backlash from many Asians and Asian Americans in Hollywood who criticized the segment as tasteless, insensitive, and racist, just to name a few things that they said. But in terms of the winners and acceptance speeches, I thought many of the acceptance speeches were really good. All the acting winners, Alicia Vikander, Mark Rylance, Brie Larson, Leonardo DiCaprio, they all gave a great acceptance speech. Alejandro Gonzalez Iñárritu gave a great acceptance speech. Sam Smith. Ennio Morricone, he gave a really great speech. He was visibly moved to tears by his win. In fact, he's actually now the oldest Oscar winner in history. He was, I think, 87 years old when he won his Oscar. So, and he received a huge standing ovation as he walked up to the stage. So, that even though I thought John Williams should have won, it was nice to see how moved Ennio Morricone was to win. Those are my favorite speeches. In terms of Best Original Song, one issue I really have a problem with is when they invite the popular singers to sing, like The Weeknd, Sam Smith, and Lady Gaga, but they don't invite the less popular singers to sing their songs. So if you're going to perform Earned It, Till It Happens to You, and Writings on the Wall, then they should have also allowed the singers of Manta Ray and Simple Song No. 3 to perform as well. Because with the Best Original Song, either you have all 5 nominees be performed, or don't have them perform at all. Of course, when all 5 nominees are performed, people complain the show drags on too long. When they don't, people complain the category isn't being given enough respect. So whatever the Oscars do, they can't seem to win when it comes to Best Original Song, at least in terms of performing them. So hopefully at the Oscars next year, they'll have all 5 nominees be performed. They better. overall, that's all I really have to say on this year's Oscar ceremony and winners. But be sure to check back in the next couple of days. I'll try to get the rest of these videos I'm making posted up where I reveal the winners of the MTV Movie Awards, the Tony Awards, the Saturn Awards, as well as finally give my take on the actual Emmy Awards nominations. I already made a video last month about Jimmy Kimmel hosting the Emmy Awards, but I still have to make my video on the nominations themselves. So I'm going to get right to that, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.